We are facing a threat unlike any other from the Chinese Communist Party hiding behind TikTok, where they can spy on Americans by collecting personal information by keystrokes and even user locations.
Welcome back. That was Montana Representative Brendan Lear. Montana is the first state that has passed a bill banning TikTok. Like, the whole state, for everyone. Now, what he's saying, well, it probably sounds pretty familiar at this point.
Amid growing concerns about data security and the potential for cyber attacks with the Beijing-based app, the Government of Canada is banning it on all government-issued devices beginning Tuesday.
A headline-making vote on Capitol Hill, the Senate passing a bill to ban the popular TikTok app from all government-issued phones and devices.
So Canada, the US, the UK, Australia, the EU, and a slew of other countries have all banned TikTok on government devices, all citing privacy and cybersecurity concerns. And we've covered many of those bans here on the show. To summarize briefly, TikTok is owned by ByteDance. It's a tech company with close ties to the Xi government in Beijing. And the major concern is that given those close ties, TikTok may be collecting and sharing user data with the Chinese government, raising issues of national security when it comes to government devices. But here's the thing that needs to be repeated. Montana isn't just banning TikTok for government employees. The ban would apply to everyone in the state. Everyone. And the state would fine TikTok, or the app stores offering it, up to $10,000 a day for each time that a person was offered the ability to access it. And that means, for example, that the Apple Store could be fined if people in Montana download the app. Now, this ban is specific to TikTok and to China. It says nothing about other social media platforms that may be gathering data on users.
Why would we do that? Why would we limit to one company in one country when we know very well that social media companies are doing the same thing, other ones?
As for TikTok users in Montana, well, this is not what they want.
My business, White Bear Moccasins, is thriving because of TikTok.
That's Shauna White Bear. She makes handcrafted moccasins, and at the beginning of the pandemic, she started posting TikToks like this. So White says that TikTok not only helped her stay connected with her customers, but actually helped her grow her business. As for TikTok itself, well, it's been pushing back hard. It's taken out ads like this one, which features White Bear, encouraging people to contact their state representatives telling them to vote no. It also said that in a statement in March that, quote, no government, as far as we know, has ever told Americans what they can or can't download from the App Store or access on the web. Now, TikTok has said that it's going to be fighting this ban legally, but we wanted to try to understand how this ban might actually work. How do you ban and how do you enforce a ban against a social media platform? And for that, I wanted to bring in Ryan Broderick. He is a tech journalist and a podcast host. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay, so I just want to try to start out and wrap my head around this, just on a technical level. Can you walk us through how this would potentially work?
That's a great question. I mean, there's not a lot of precedent for this. Most likely, it would have to happen at a service provider level. Some sort of geofencing, whether that's being done through, say, the people who manage your cell phone plan in Montana, or some sort of infrastructural level. But as I said, this has never really happened before. This idea hasn't even really been floated before. So we're in some really weird territory. I'm especially curious how that would play with people visiting the state. Is this something that's going to happen to, let's say, a Verizon resident that has their phone plan registered to Montana, or is this something where you drive into Montana and all of a sudden TikTok doesn't work on your phone? Right. Or is this a thing where if you buy an iPhone in Montana, it comes with some sort of script that blocks the ability to download the app? Like I said, this has never happened before. So really, we have nothing but questions in terms of how this would work.
Okay, so I am curious, if it's so unclear how this might work, why is Montana taking this approach? Like, what are they trying to get out of this?
Well, I think that we're sort of in the midst of something similar to the Satanic Panic in the 80s, the heavy metal crisis, the Red Scare, the video games make you violent discourse from the 90s and early 2000s. We're in sort of the center of a hysteria storm when it comes to TikTok. And there's bans happening in all kinds of different ways across America and other countries at the same time. Usually these are happening with, let's say, a government employee who has a government provided device. They can't download TikTok because there's concerns that it could be surveilling them or using their data in some kind of nefarious way. The US lawmakers have signaled they want to try to actually federally ban TikTok, but there's not really any sort of like coherent way to do that. The most popular form of legislation to even attempt it is called the Restrict Act. It has bipartisan support. The White House has endorsed it, but it hasn't been formally introduced yet. So right now we're just seeing this very confusing, decentralized movement across America to do something about TikTok, but no one really knows what they're supposed to do, what they can do, what's even legal. It's all very confusing, actually.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the approach that Montana is taking is that they are going to fine both TikTok and or the App Store if people download it or use the app inside the state. And I'm curious if that approach has been used before or how that compares to, other sort of regulations we've seen put on big tech companies, both in America but also elsewhere in the world.
This is something I actually find really interesting. So this strategy, finding a big tech company or a marketplace because they're not adhering to rules and regulations for the local environment, is something we see a lot in the European Union. This is a huge strategy for how they've dealt with things, whether it's something like the GDPR, which is a browsing privacy regulation, or even things like pushing for Apple to change its charger to USB-C so that it's universal. Or right now, Germany is fining, it says that they will be fining Twitter billions of dollars for instances of hate speech that haven't been cleaned up on the platform since Elon Musk took over. That's their main strategy, is load up fines and just start hitting these companies with them until they do something. We have not actually seen this way in America with individual states. But I do think it's interesting that Montana has gone this route. It does, to me, feel slightly simpler than having the much more complicated First Amendment question. But then at the same time, you do sort of circle back to that again by accident, because does Montana have the ability to do this? Do they have the ability to block access to a specific app and then fine companies for providing access to it? We don't know. And I imagine that if this bill does go through, it's going to rocket straight to the courts.
So this last point that you've touched on here, the potential for it to end up in the courts, I wanted to ask sort of like what our sense is on how this is going to interact with the legal system.
I don't think it can. For this to work, we would have to fundamentally rethink the very architecture of the American internet. For the last 30, almost 40 years, there has been this idea that if you have an internet connection, you can go online and you can visit any web page. And if there is any sort of regulation on the content you're looking at, whether that's harmful material or it's, hate speech or advocating for violence, those things are, or copyright infringing material, all of those things are whacked down and taken down in individual instances. But we've never seen a blanket ban on an entire platform, an entire website. That just doesn't happen.
All right, well, Ryan, I really appreciate you giving us a broader perspective on how this is going, and we'll have to sort of see how it turns out. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm very curious. Thank you for having me. Bye.